Around 9 in the morning, on a wet marsh road in southeast Texas, a cat stepped onto the pavement in front of a moving truck. It was low to the ground, and it made no sound. Dark, almost black in the gray light coming off the marsh, with a body that seemed too long for its height, and a tail that ran back behind it, nearly as long as the animal itself. It did not bolt. It walked, calm and deliberate, across the wet asphalt, slipped into the tall grass at the shoulder, and was gone. The man behind the wheel was Chester Moore, a wildlife journalist who has spent decades chasing reports of strange cats across Texas. He has heard every Black Panther story the state has to offer, and he has learned to be careful with them. This was February of 2026, and what he saw did not fit the Panther stories. It was something older and stranger than that. The more he turned it over, the more certain he became of what had just crossed in front of him. He believed it was a Jaguarundi, and that is where the problem begins. Because according to the state of Texas, and according to the scientists who spent 18 years looking, what Moore saw on that road cannot exist anymore. It should have been an easy thing to dismiss. One man, one road, one animal moving fast in bad light. Except that it wasn't the only one. Go back to the spring of 2025 to Seguin, a town northeast of San Antonio, where the Guadalupe River runs through farmland and wooded creek bottoms. Residents there began describing the same kind of animal to one another and then to the local news. A large, dark, long-bodied cat moving near homes and fields and the tree line along the creeks. Not a bobcat, not a coyote. Something they didn't have a name for until somebody online supplied one. Jaguarundi. The word spread faster than the sightings did, and the descriptions kept landing on the same profile. Long, low, dark, a tail that trailed too far behind the body. To understand why a single word could set off that much noise, you have to understand what a Jaguarundi is and what it is not. It is not a panther, and it is not big. A Jaguarundi is a small wildcat, rarely heavier than a good-sized house cat, but built on a completely different frame. Long in the body, short in the leg, with a small flattened head and rounded ears set low, it looks less like a cat than like something built halfway toward a weasel or an otter. It comes in two color phases. One is a reddish tawny brown, the other is a dark charcoal gray that reads as black in low light. And its tail is the signature, long, heavy, trailing, running back nearly the full length of its body. It is the kind of animal that, glimpsed once at the edge of a field, refuses to match anything a person expects a cat to look like. There is one more thing about the Jaguarundi that matters for this story, and it sets the animal apart from almost every other cat in North America. It does not keep to the night. Where a bobcat or a cougar moves in the dark and the half-light, the Jaguarundi is often out in the open daylight, hunting through the morning and into the middle of the day, dropping down to water to drink when the sun is high. It works the dense, thorny thickets of the deep South Texas brush, the mesquite and granjeno and catclaw acacia. And it hunts mostly birds, along with the rats and rabbits and lizards that live down in that tangle. A small, dark cat that hunts by daylight, low and quiet through the brush at the edge of a road. Hold on to that detail. It will matter when we come back to a truck on a marsh road at 9 in the morning. For as long as anyone has kept records, the Jaguarundi's home has been Mexico, Central America, and the forests of South America. The United States was only ever the very tip of its range, a thin margin of thorn scrub and brush in the southernmost counties of Texas, along the lower Rio Grande. Even at its best, this was the edge of the map for the species. The animal was never documented living north of that narrow strip of far South Texas. Everything else, everything most Texans picture when they picture the state, was already outside the Jaguarundi's world. Which brings us to the part of the story the sightings never mention. The last time anyone in the United States could hold a Jaguarundi in their hands and prove what it was. The year was 1986. The animal was already dead. It had been struck by a car and salvaged from the roadside about 2 miles south of Brownsville, at the very bottom of Texas, and the specimen was sent off and confirmed by the Smithsonian's National Museum. A single road-killed cat at the end of the country. That is the last hard, physical, undeniable record of a Jaguarundi in the United States. Nothing has replaced it in the 40 years since. No confirmed photograph, no verified track, no body, no trail camera image that survived a biologist's second look. For 4 decades, the animal has existed in the United States only in the accounts of people who swear they saw it, and in nothing you can put under glass. So the state went looking, not casually and not briefly. Between 2003 and 2021, researchers ran one of the most exhaustive searches ever mounted for a single American cat. They spread camera traps across South Texas and down into northeastern Mexico, into the brush country on both sides of the river, the exact thorn scrub the Jaguarundi would have to be hiding in if it were still here. They ran those cameras for 18 years. When the work was tallied, it came to more than 350,000 trap nights across 685 camera sites. 350,000 nights of cameras watching the brush in the last place on the continent the Jaguarundi had ever called home. In Texas, the number of Jaguarundi those cameras recorded was 0. Not one blurry frame, not a single cat. 16 properties and 2 highway corridors watched for 18 years, and nothing walked in front of a lens. And here is the detail that turns the null result into something colder. Just across the Rio Grande, on 2 properties in the northern Sierra of Tamaulipas, the same kind of cameras caught the Jaguarundi 126 times. The animal was right there, photographed, counted, alive, moving through the brush a short distance south of the border. It simply stopped, as far as any camera could prove, at the water. The scientists who published the work drew the only conclusion the evidence allowed. The Jaguarundi, they wrote, is likely extirpated from the United States. The same animal that filled those Mexican cameras never once tripped a shutter on the Texas side, stopped at a line on the map that nobody could get it to cross. If you have ever glimpsed something at the edge of your own property that you couldn't name and been told it was your imagination, tell me where you live and what you saw, state and animal. The comments on this channel have become a map of their own. Now you would expect a story like that to end with a species quietly struck from the books. And this is where the Jaguarundi becomes genuinely strange, because on paper, it was never struck from anything. The Jaguarundi was placed on the United States Endangered Species List on June 14, 1976. In the half-century since, through every survey and every empty camera and every scientific paper arguing the animal is gone, it has never been delisted, never downgraded. It remains today a federally endangered species, legally protected across a country its own researchers say it no longer inhabits. The science moved to likely gone, the law stayed at endangered, and nobody has reconciled the two. So you end up with an animal in a kind of bureaucratic limbo, extinct enough that biologists recommend planning for its recovery as if from zero. Alive enough in the eyes of the law to still carry the full weight of federal protection, and loose enough in the accounts of ordinary people to keep walking across roads in front of trucks. Set that beside the ocelot, a cat listed exactly the same way, endangered, that shares the same South Texas brush. The ocelot has a dedicated federal recovery program, a national wildlife refuge managed partly around it, and wildlife tunnels dug under South Texas highways to keep it from being flattened by traffic. The Jaguarundi carries the identical legal status and receives none of that for a simple reason. You cannot build a recovery program around an animal your cameras cannot find. It holds the paperwork of a species we are trying to save and the reality of one we have already lost, which is the point where a careful person should stop and push back. Because there is an obvious explanation for all of it. And it does not require a ghost cat. People misidentify animals constantly. A dark house cat at the edge of a field, seen for 2 seconds in bad light, becomes a panther. A fisher, a bobcat, a large tomcat gone feral, any of them can wear the story a witness needs them to wear. Jonah Evans, a mammalogist with Texas Parks and Wildlife, has said as much on the agency's own record. Most reported Jaguarundi, he has explained, turn out to be house cats. And there is a clean physical tell that usually settles it. A house cat's tail runs around 12 inches. A Jaguarundi's tail can run to twice that, up to 2 feet, trailing behind a body built far longer and lower than any tabby. When people send in photographs, Evans says, the long tail almost never shows up. The cat in the picture is somebody's Tom. That is the strongest version of the skeptic's case, and it is a good one. Where is the physical evidence? No scat, no clear photo, no body since 1986, and 18 years of cameras that found nothing. At some point, absence of evidence starts to look like evidence of absence. Except that the same biology that says the Jaguarundi is gone also explains precisely why a few of it might not be, and why we would never catch them, if so. Start with where this population lived. Wai Ming Wong, who directs small cat conservation for the wildcat organization Panthera, made the point plainly when the extinction study came out. South Texas was the northernmost edge of the Jaguarundi's entire range on Earth, and populations at the far margin of a species' range are the first to thin out and wink through when their habitat is squeezed, and the hardest of all to ever confirm because there were never many to begin with. The brush that once ran unbroken from Mexico up into South Texas has been cleared and cut and farmed and fenced for a century. What is left is fragments. A marginal population in shrinking, broken habitat does not vanish all at once with a body to mark the moment. It fades to a handful, then to the occasional disperser drifting north out of Mexico, across a river the cameras can't fully watch, into brush no one is standing in. And that brush is a fraction of what it used to be. Since the early 1900s, roughly 95% of the native Tamaulipan thorn scrub in the lower Rio Grande Valley has been cleared for farmland, for towns, for roads. Down along the rivers where the cover was thickest and a cat could move unseen, closer to 99% of it is gone. Whatever Jaguarundi the United States once held lived in that vanished brush, and it left as the brush left. But here is what keeps the question alive, instead of closing it. The ocelot, another small wild cat of the same South Texas thorn scrub, is still hanging on in it right now. Fewer than 80 are thought to survive in the entire lower Rio Grande Valley, a couple of dozen on the Laguna Atascosa refuge, and the rest scattered across private ranch land in Willacy and Kennedy counties. People who live in that country can go their whole lives and never see one. A cat can still disappear into what is left of that brush. The ocelot proves it every day, in numbers so small the cameras barely hold them. If those fragments can still hide a population of ocelots almost nobody ever photographs. They can hide the occasional Jaguarundi slipping up from Mexico even more easily. And a single dispersing cat is exactly the kind of animal a survey is built to miss. 350,000 trap nights sounds like total coverage, until you remember how much brush country there is, and how a low population cat moving through it can walk a lifetime of nights without ever setting a paw in front of a lens. The New York cougar taught wildlife biologists this lesson in the Northeast. Animals that are real, rare, and transient are almost never photographed twice, and the system built to filter out the hoaxes filters out the real ones right along with them. Not enough to confirm a breeding population in Texas. Not enough to dismiss the cat Chester Moore watched cross the road. That refrain is not a dodge. It is the honest shape of the evidence. The cameras found nothing, and that is real, and it is not nothing. The sightings keep coming, and they are real too, and most of them are house cats, and a few of them are not the kind of thing a house cat explains. Both of those statements are true at the same time, and neither one cancels the other out, which is why the sightings never quite stop. Seguin in the spring, a dark, long-bodied cat along the creek bottoms that the neighbors couldn't name. A marsh road the next winter, and a man who has chased these reports his whole life, watching one walk in front of his truck in broad daylight and coming away certain. The same profile every time, long, low, dark, that trailing tail. Reported in the same country the cameras swept, by people who have nothing to gain and a lifetime of local knowledge to lose if they are wrong. And these reports are not some sudden fad. South Texas has been trading Jaguarundi stories for about as long as the brush has been disappearing. The animal even earned a nickname out of it, the ghost cat, the one somebody's uncle saw cross a caliche road once and could never prove. For decades, the state has fielded a slow, steady trickle of these accounts, most of them explained away as house cats. A few of them left open, none of them ever nailed down. What changed lately is not the sightings. It is that a Ring camera, a phone, and a wildlife journalist with a truck put the old rumor back on everyone's screen at the same time. None of it is proof. A cat that walks into tall grass and does not come back leaves no specimen. And a species is not brought back from extinction by eyewitness accounts, however sincere. The record still reads the way the scientists left it, confirmed in Mexico, unconfirmed here since a single dead cat on a Brownsville roadside 4 decades ago. But the question those sightings raised did not die with that cat. It is still out there on the marsh roads and the creek bottoms of South Texas every time someone slows down for something long and dark and low that slips into the brush before they can be sure. On paper, the Jaguarundi is still endangered, still protected, still owed a recovery plan by a government that lists it as a living thing. On paper, it is also, by the judgment of its own scientists, already gone. Both of those things are true. And the cat on the marsh road, if it was ever there at all, answers to neither.